defense by LeBron. Clock dwindling down. Step back.
Jokic will be fine, but he's going to need help.
Brown with a steal. Ahead of the pack. Throws it down.
Giannis takes down Jokic.
And in game one, Jokic touch pass to Gordon.
I'm going to go with the Golden State Warriors.
Ooh.
Why so serious?
The funny thing, and Perk mentions it early on in the whole Jokic isn't the MVP narrative, is that Nikola Jokic isn't in the top 10 in scoring. I'd say this to Perk if he was in the room. Get over it. Stop focusing on who's the top scorer. Scoring is only part of the equation. And if we throw out advanced stats, the equation's like 10 factors long. Scoring is one of those. The top 25 NBA scorers average over 20 a game. The top 12 to 13 average over 25 a game. So as long as the player in question averages over 20 points a game, preferably 25 points a game, they're in the conversation. We're done with points. It's over now. We move on to the next thing. And in the case of these two, Jimmy Butler is averaging 7 rebounds a game in the playoffs. Jokic is averaging 14. Double. In these playoffs, Jimmy Butler has averaged 5 assists per game. Jokic has averaged almost 10. Double. Now, Jimmy is a decent free throw shooter. He is a above average 3-point shooter. And he has a typical field goal percentage for a wing. Jokic is averaging almost 60% from the floor. He's averaging over 40% from 3. And he still has, I believe, 83 or 88% free throw percentage. So at no point, none, is Jimmy Butler on the same page, same playing field, same level as Jokic. And when we talk center to center, oh, get out of here. Bam's a nice player, but Bam might be the 10th or 12th best center in the NBA. Jokic is the best center in the NBA and the best player in the NBA. So this is not a fair matchup no matter how you slice it. But darn, did the NBA media try to push that agenda. So this next one is something that's really bothered me for quite a while, and it's not Jokic specific. I mean, it affects him, but it's not Jokic specific. But I'm gonna mention Jokic along with one other player that is a sports celebrity who suffers from the same unfair treatment. Jokic and LeBron are downgraded because they have more overall success than the people they're being compared to. In LeBron's case, he has now been to 12 conference finals series. There are great players in the NBA who are lucky to get to 1. Jokic has been to the conference finals 3 times now. And what do they say about both? You know, LeBron only won 4 times of those 12. Or Jokic has been 3 times but never been to the finals until this year. When did we decide consistency is a downgrade? When did we decide that being that dude consistently, always making deep playoff runs, doesn't count? We absolutely, as a sports watching fan base, I don't care who you follow, I don't care what players you like, what team you like, we have absolutely got to get rid of this ludicrous idea that if it's not perfect, it's trash. And you know what I'm talking about. Anytime we're talking about sports, movies, TV shows, whatever it is that we get our entertainment from, we are living in an era where people will think to themselves, if you are not the apex best there is, you're garbage. I don't know when that started, but it needs to stop. Jokic took a Denver Nuggets team that did not have Jamal Murray, that Michael Porter Jr. was not at the level of development he's at currently. They didn't have a bulk of what they needed to make a run, but he still gets them to the Western Conference Finals. And the fact that he gets downgraded for doing all of that, but not making the finals, is ridiculous. It's just as ridiculous as people saying 6-0 to LeBron. So the next big question is, what is Jokic? And I mean that plainly. What is it that makes up what Jokic is as a player? We almost always come back to the same concept, and that is player comps, right? How does he compare to another player? And I think the hard thing with Jokic is there is no one person that he translates to, because we've never seen this. We've never seen a center who can lead the entire playoffs in assists. So you got to dig a little deeper and kind of think outside the box a little bit. We could come up with a number of players that all make one big amalgamation and it equals Jokic. But just to keep things real simple, I'm just going to throw out two names. And while it's going to sound absurd, when you really step back from it, it's going to make perfect sense. Jokic is Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in a 7'1", 280-pound frame. Now, I'm not suggesting that Jokic is better than Magic and better than Bird or better than both combined. I'm not saying that. I'm saying those two gentlemen's games are represented in Jokic. I've not seen a non-point guard, maybe ever, pass the way Jokic does, which brings in the Magic Johnson aspect. But as a shooter, having the touch, being able to just know where the rim is, wherever he is on the floor, and being able to put the ball in position to just drop in there. That's Larry Bird. Now, toughness, also Larry Bird, in the highlight section, I'm sure you noticed, he gets hit a lot. Doesn't seem to faze him. If he had a smaller frame, a guy like Jokic would probably sacrifice his body a lot like Larry did. So, those two guys together get us the closest we're going to get to saying this equals Jokic. Now, the scary thing about Jokic in particular, and most players go through this, they start to attack the offseason differently. For years and years, LeBron would actually go into every offseason and pick one thing to work on. The scary thing about Joker is, what if he's about to enter that realm of his career and he decides to dedicate himself to being a legit defender? Jokic had to dramatically change his body, his approach to the game, and refine a lot of things. So this would not be foreign to him. But if Jokic decides to be a good defender and actually learns those skills, then this whole conversation just gets blown out of the water. It's not even close who the best player in the world would be. Because whether you want to talk about KD or Steph or really anybody, none of them have the balance of their game. They all can score in volume. So what? Everybody at the top can. And then after that, Steph's got unbelievable shooting ability, best three-point shooter we've probably ever seen. KD can hit a shot from anywhere on the floor. And even both of those guys can put up legitimate assists and rebound numbers. 25, 12, and 10. Just as the stats show, that's impressive. But then when you go back, as we did, and watch Jokic, and you see how he does it, it's just different. So Jokic is the best player in the world, whether it's sexy or not. All right, let's talk about Kendrick Perkins' elephant in the room. He maintains that players stat pad all the time. And I would agree that a large percentage of the NBA players are fully well aware of where they are in the game, in the week, in the month, in the season. They know their number. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that guys don't stay in games they don't need to stay in to get that one last rebound, or that guys aren't looking for that one last assist to get a triple-double. They absolutely are. The difference, though, is that Jokic doesn't care. Most of that, the vast majority of that, is all contract-related. It's all, I want my roses, and that's totally fine. Jokic doesn't give a darn about anybody's roses, especially his. So when Jokic is in the game and he's got 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists, yeah, he might stat pad to get to that. but the guy's got 100 triple-doubles. It's not like it's a rare occurrence. It's not like this is Ricky Davis throwing the ball off the wrong rim so that he can get his triple-double. Jokic doesn't have a shred of Ricky Davis in him. So let's just throw that away. If there's stat padding, the stat padding is done because situationally it gives his team the best chance to win. So that whole narrative about Perk saying that he's stat padding just so he can win the MVP doesn't make sense because Jokic didn't want to win the MVP. He didn't want to win it the last 2 years. We're talking about the MVP because it matters to us. It doesn't matter to Jokic. If Jokic could go, and let's just say for the sake of conversation, if Jokic could average 8 points a game, but 12 rebounds and 10 assists a game, and by doing so, guarantee that his team would go undefeated, guess what? Jokic ain't scoring more than 10 points a game. Whether you're hearing it from me, Michael Malone, Jokic himself, his other teammates, it is apparent that Jokic cares about winning. He wants team success, and therefore all this other stuff is getting in the way of him just working on his game and having team success. He doesn't care about MVPs. He doesn't care about a scoring title or a rebound. He doesn't care about any of that. So while Perk's not wrong that NBA players stat pad, the stat padding only matters because the motivation of the player is to say, I need these stats so that I can blank in the future. Jokic doesn't care about that. So Perk can scream all he wants about stat padding and how what he's doing is, I don't know, somehow not fair to Joel Embiid. Give me a break. There are certain aspects to this national narrative that we all just should have thrown out, the analysts included. And the moment that Perk found himself going down the stat padding route, not to mention the fact that he's suggesting that there's some sort of conspiracy theory agenda against people that dominate the NBA, is also kind of laughable. Maybe it's just me. I can't fathom I'm alone in this, but we'll go for it anyway. Joel Embiid averaged 30 points a game, 11 rebounds a game, and 3 assists a game. Jokic averaged 25 points a game, 12 rebounds a game, and 2/10 of an assist away from 10 assists a game. So we'll call it 30, 11, and 4 against 25, 12, and 10. In what world is that Joel Embiid stat line noticeably better than the Jokic stat line? And if we were to get into percentages, it's also not going to favor Embiid. So, yeah, go ahead and put me in the category of people that thinks Nikola Jokic should have won his 3rd straight league MVP. Not that he would have cared. And that's really just a comment for Perkins. I mean, Joel Embiid, enjoy your league MVP. I'm not trying to take it away from you. But the notion that it was so asinine that the NBA voters would have voted for Nikola Jokic for a 3rd year in a row, it's not a crazy idea. He's got the numbers, and as we saw, the eye test. Now, don't get me wrong, Embiid's a phenomenal player, but he's still kind of just your typical big. He doesn't impact the game from a passing standpoint. His shooting percentages aren't so good that they're undeniable. So where this whole idea came from, that the season belonged to Embiid, I don't get. And you absolutely can point out the one head-to-head matchup where Embiid did come out on top over Jokic. But that's one aspect. And once the MVP voting was over and it was awarded to Embiid, that's great. Then we move on, and now it's June, and we're looking back on. You really feel good about that decision? This Philly didn't last very long. And Jokic is standing with his Nuggets teammates at a victory parade. One thing that Perk's not wrong about is that they keep moving the goalposts on the MVP discussion. You know, it used to be just who's the most valuable to their team. It's almost like the stats didn't matter that much. Then it changed to, they have to be the best player in the league. There was an entire stretch where MVP might as well have just been translated to most exciting player. Valuable wasn't part of the equation. But that's where we need to get back to, is some combination of meeting certain statistical benchmarks, but then being looked at as how valuable you are to said team. Sometimes it'll be the big star, right? A lot of times, LeBron James probably should have won 5 or 6 MVPs in a row because he was literally the best player in the world. And he absolutely meant that much to his team. He was the most valuable player in the league. Now, most recently, it feels like, according to Perkins and some others, you gotta be top 10 in scoring. Your team has to have good playoff seeding. There's so many criteria that I kind of agree with him. We don't know what the criteria for most valuable player is. And what we really need to do is get back to the valuable part of it. Denver, they don't have to win any one way. The Miami Heat team was only going to win this series if one thing was true. And they were unrealistically hot from three. If they're not shooting the three ball well, they got no chance in beating the Nuggets. But if the shoe is on the other foot, it doesn't hold up. Denver does not have to beat you by Nikola Jokic scoring 40 points. They don't have to beat you with Jamal Murray hitting 80% from three one night. They don't have to beat you by having Aaron Gordon go off. But they can. They're built to sustain these waves and to take whatever attack comes with them. I can't think of another team in the last decade that's better at letting the game come to them than Denver. So yeah, Miami was doomed from the start. The Denver Nuggets, no matter who you are, where you live, or who you root for, the Denver Nuggets in 2022, 2023, and beyond are good for the NBA. I'm not saying you got to root for them, but in the back of your mind, when you hear Denver beat a good team next year, or string together a bunch of wins, or you hear an analyst talk about how they're playing more than what they're doing, it's going to become apparent, and in the back of your mind, you should like that. Maybe not to the point that they prevent your team from having success. The more balanced and non-super team roster building process teams do well, the better it'll be for the NBA. Success from a team like Denver, like Sacramento, is good for the NBA, and it will swing the pendulum in the other direction. If you've been sleeping on the Denver Nuggets, it's time to wake up. Seriously. I don't know how more plainly to put it, and I don't care who you're a fan of. But if you're a basketball fan, going back to the beginning of the video, you should want the Denver Nuggets to have some level of sustained success because it means good things for everybody else. Notwithstanding Michael Malone's optimism, the Denver Nuggets are absolutely built to make a run here. This is not a one-and-done situation. Now, I'm not guaranteeing they'll be a 2-time champion or a 3-time champion or anything like that. But you're absolutely crazy if you think the Denver Nuggets, as constituted today, they are built to be in the title conversation for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, I absolutely do not expect a Chicago Bulls-like three-peat type scenario, but I think a Golden State Warriors type dynasty is absolutely on the table. To go and win, say, 3 rings in 5 years is absolutely something that could realistically happen. The Denver Nuggets and their success are good for the NBA. And this notion that everyone needs a super team to be relevant, it needs to die. I hate to say it this way, but I'm gonna. Post-NBA Finals championship, it is far past the point where the NBA fan base at large, regardless of who you root for, needs to start putting some respect on the Denver Nuggets Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Malone, because this Denver Nuggets team is not going anywhere anytime soon. And unless Jokic pulls a Jim Brown and just walks away at the apex of his career, I can't fathom a scenario where they aren't in the title conversation for the next 3 to 5 years. This season and this playoff run was different, and I hope most of you were paying attention. I hope most of you watched. If not, it's not too late to go order NBA League Pass, and you can go back and watch all the games. The Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic specifically were everything the NBA needed in 2023. And even though the Denver Nuggets are not my number one team, I'm hoping for their success because their success makes for a better NBA. I want to thank you, as always, for checking out this video. Like, share, subscribe. And we'll see you next time. You have a wonderful day. It's 7:30 in the morning, downtown Denver, getting ready for this parade. I really don't know why people need to be up this early.
If you're looking forward to a parade coming up in Denver.
When is parade? When is parade?
Thursday.
No. I need to go home. Okay.
You know that I told that I don't want to stay on parade, but I want to stay on parade. This is the best.